Hello guys, so in this video we're gonna change the rear shock suspension on my Honda NC700X. I'm gonna switch the camera over. So this is my bike, and it's got 20,000 miles, and during the riding I feel the rear suspension is kind of bottoming out. It's probably a good time to get a new suspension if you feel like your suspension is struggling, especially if your bike is high mileage or you bought it used. Now in this case, I bought it probably a couple hundred miles ago. I rode it for a couple hundred miles. I rented it out. Someone rode it for a couple hundred miles. Nothing is seriously wrong with the bike, but I just feel like the suspension after 20,000 miles, which is right there, probably needs a new one. So I went on to eBay and I bought a almost brand new suspension. This one has about only 4,000 miles on it, so quite newer. And as you can see, after I oiled it a little bit, most of the rust is gone and it's looking pretty good. So we're going to be using this used suspension to replace my really used suspension in the NC700X. And I just want to give you a few tips on how to replace it. Because if you have a high mileage one, you probably want to think about replacing it, which I think is going to be pretty easy. Okay, so the first thing first is you don't have to remove a lot of panels. The only panel you might need to loosen is the right side main panel under the seat right here. And you don't have to remove it, you just need to remove the screw. In turn, you can pry it open, and it exposes that little hole over there, which you're gonna use, I think, either an 8 or 9 millimeter socket wrench to go in, to grab the socket, the bolts in there, which is holding the top part of the suspension. I believe this is the top. Yes, the top part. You remove that bolt, you remove that screw, and it should come off from the top. On the bottom, again, really easy. The linkage you need to remove to get the suspension out, and also this bolt right here. So 1, 2, 3 axis you need to remove from the bottom, and the fourth axis is going to be just the top part. So again, not a hard job. And if you want to spend a little extra money, like quality, to get a quality suspension, there are a few options still currently available for both the 700 and the 750X. Okay, they're pretty much the same bike. So yes, this video is not gonna be exactly how to, but just telling you guys what needs to be done in order for you to get a quick fix and get the suspension removed. So I'm gonna try to put the camera right here, and hopefully you can see my process. Okay, so I'm gonna pry this open, and we need to find a proper size socket for that little bolt on the top. Okay, and with that bolt on the top, you'll probably have to pry the other side open as well to grab a, in this case I have a flexible, okay, so I have a flexible head socket that I could use to actually get to any angle I need to get in there on the other side. The other side is using a hex wrench, the hex key. So I'm gonna find the proper hex key, lock it in place, and then just turn from this side to get the top axle loosened. All right guys, so showing you that I pretty much got the necessary stuff to get the top part off. This is a 17 millimeter socket on the right side, and on the other side is a 9 millimeter hex wrench. So I pried both sides open, but it looks like I don't have to remove the screw here, but I removed it anyway. You can just go in here to get that hex key in there, because you just need to use this side as a leverage when you turn the other side, or the other way around. So whichever side works for you, you can go ahead and do that. But as long as you get both of those wrenches in there, we should be able to loosen that starting right now. Okay, so we're gonna start loosening it. After that one bolt is loosened, those 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3, will be fairly easy, and then the suspension should drop right out. Okay, I'm just gonna try to leave my camera somewhere here. Hopefully it captures something. Let's see. Right, right here. So I'm gonna try to turn it counterclockwise. And it's loosened. I noticed the other side didn't even move. So moved maybe a little bit on the other side. Okay, you can see the other side right there. So that other hex wrench is like holding on to it just a little bit. But we're gonna try to just continue and get the axle out. So this is what the top axle bolt and the axle looks like. Okay, so basically it just goes in here and it locks in place. Pretty a lot of torque, so make sure when you put it back, torque it properly. Okay, and I didn't have to like punch it or knock it or anything. It literally just slides off. And the reason why is I have the bike propped to some sort of brick, so it is at this height preset, and the front had some resistance, so the bike is not going to be moving. It is on the center stand, and the next step we could start loosening those 3 bolts. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just try. Again, this is a 17mm bolt. We're going to remove probably those 2 first, and then lastly the other one. Okay, and let's see. So here is my 17mm right here. I only have one socket that's 17, so for the other side I'm going to be using something similar in size for the SAE and hook it up to my other wrench and probably just use it as some sort of leverage, so it turns freely, but it's gonna give it some resistance when I try to turn. Okay, but let's just try first. See if it works. I'm gonna loosen everything first. Try not to strip the bolts. That would be bad. Alright, so the bike started moving around, where I have to be careful because I do not have something that holds what do you call it, like a lift. So we definitely have to be careful of that. Let's see. All right, so the suspension is out again. The whole process is literally just getting 3 axes removed. So I don't even have to remove this one. Okay, so just one joint here, one joint here, and one joint on the top. Those are the 3 axles. Looking at the suspension, yeah, I think it definitely could use some upgrade, because looking at mine, which is right here, that the rubber is completely disintegrated. That just probably indicates super high mileage use. And yeah, so at this point I would say let's try to put the new one on there. And this one I again soaked it in oil to remove all the rust, or initial rust at least, so it looks a lot cleaner. And again, this one only has about 4,000 miles of use on it. This one 20,000 miles. Not gonna try to change the preload because from what I heard, doesn't do much, but you do have a lot of threads left to change preload if necessary. You see the threads on the bottom, that's where you can compress and get more preload for the for more luggage if you actually do travel with a full luggage pack. Okay, so that is pretty much the tip. If you don't have a helper on the other side and you use your socket wrenches, I usually just leave this on the floor as a leverage point on the other end, and that way if I turn from this side, this can hold it in place, and then I can get all those bolts loosened rather easily. That will be my tip for you guys for the removal. And next we're gonna just try to put it on the bike the same way it came off. And again, I don't have a, how do you call it, hydraulic lift, so I just use the brick, which actually works perfectly fine. Things can get singered. Okay, so everything, all the joints are still moving perfectly fine, and we can find that perfect balance from the height of this thing, get everything lined up and put the shock back on there. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that and maybe show you guys once it's finished. All right, so we're at the end of the project, and it's actually easier than I thought about changing the rear suspension for the NC700X. And just a couple of things to note when you're installing it. Okay, so the other two bolts, the axles here holding the bottom of the suspension, and the axle on top holding the top of the suspension, is very easy to install. The tricky one is this linkage arm. Okay, so what I did, again, back to the let's turn this over this way. You see the little brick? This brick actually helps quite a lot because I can actually fine-tune the angle here by just moving it forward and backward, and I have now found the perfect angle, and I tried by inserting the linkage, and it goes in, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the linkage in on the other end and tighten all those linkage points. At this moment the installation is actually pretty much complete. The last thing left to do is putting the two covers back on the back into the bike, and put the two screws on the cover and put the seat back on the bike. And yeah, so that's pretty easy. So let me put the linkage in here. Okay, what I also did is to use the grease to grease all the components on all the bolts, joints, and axles and bushings. So now everything is actually again revitalized with a lot of grease, a lot of oil, and hopefully this can prevent it from getting rusted rather quickly for a long time to go. Okay, so let's see. All right, so at this point all I have to do is tighten this bolt, and you can see if I tighten it here it doesn't move. That's because we need to go to the other side, okay, and put the bolts on the other side to support it. Let's see. Which is right here. This is a 15 millimeter. I'm gonna leave it here, so once it is in place, let's see its size. So it should work. So basically, using the ground as your best friend, you can actually start tightening those bolts rather quickly. When you tighten, this one is going to hold it there, and obviously eventually you'll be able to tighten it properly. Okay, I'm just going to make sure that it goes in a little more, and you're going to tighten from this. So if you don't have a friend to help you holding stuff, this is definitely a great way to go using this method. Okay, and again, I remember they were torqued pretty tight, so when you install you also want to make sure this is torqued pretty tight so nothing gets loose on you when you're riding. That will be dangerous. Okay, I think that's good. And at this point we can release the brick and try to see if everything stays, and see if the suspension actually rebounds or not. Hopefully it does, and then we should have we would conclude to have had a good suspension replacement project. Let's move the brick. And I'm going to try to take it off the center stand. Get my hands cleaned a little. truth, hopefully it works. Let's see. Seems to be working fine. Rebound is working fine. There's no weird noise. Okay. So I think we can say that we have a fairly new suspension installed, and really just revitalized this really old suspension from the NC700X. And that's pretty much the process. Again, I'm sorry I didn't show you step by step, but I think all the important parts are mentioned, which is make sure you have the right tools, socket size. You definitely need a 17 millimeter, a 15 millimeter, and a yeah, those two are definitely the requirements. And you just need to minimally remove this panel and pry it open to get access to that hole. You need a brick. If you don't have a lift for the sidearm, use a brick, works perfectly fine, and very easy to align as well when the project is done. So that's pretty much everything that you need to know. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below. Otherwise, I'm going to go do a test ride and just make sure the bike works fine. And that's pretty much it. Hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please do hit the like button or subscribe. And I should have more NC700X maintenance videos coming out for you guys eventually. So stay tuned and take care.